In today's video, I'm going to share with you 10 reselling mistakes that I see vintage resellers making that are impacting the profits for their business. In my 10 years of experience as a vintage reseller with an antique booth, I have either personally made these mistakes or I have witnessed other resellers making these mistakes. These mistakes are not specific to selling in an antique or vintage booth, and they are also going to apply to people who sell online. I realize that there are going to be people who disagree with what I'm about to say, or who simply just want to add something to what I am about to say, and I would encourage you to do that in the comments. I always encourage respectful and healthy debate in the comments, and I try very hard to respond to every single comment that I get. At the end of the video, as usual, I'm going to have some pet outtakes for you. This pet outtake is going to be rescue specific. It's going to be about not my personal pets, but it's going to be about rescue. That's coming up at the end after these 10 reselling mistakes. The first mistake is buying what you love as opposed to buying what your customers love or what will actually sell. I have a couple examples of this because I am guilty of this. Here is an example of a very 1970s pattern. This was my mother's everyday china, or her everyday dishes. Now this is by Noritake, and it was made in Japan, so I guess Japanese stoneware, you could call it. And the pattern is called Sun Glow. Now, I love this for sentimental reasons and also because I'm one of those people who actually likes the 1970s colors, the browns and beiges and avocado greens and mustard yellows. Now, we were seeing that some of this stuff was popular when mid-century modern was just all the rage, right? And those colors fit in with mid-century modern. But right now, I think we're definitely seeing more flowery, bright colored things being in right now, more of the cottagecore or granny core aesthetic as opposed to the 1970s colors. Here's another example of something that I love, and I buy it because I'm hoping that it's going to come back in style again one day, and it's false graph. Here's an example. I ended up buying these coffee cups. These are in the Key Largo pattern and keeping them for myself because I don't really see false graph moving very well for me in my booth. And I've had a lot of people comment on my videos that it's just not in right now and that people don't like it because it's so heavy. It is heavy, durable stoneware. So this is an example of something that I buy, which is a mistake, knowing that it's probably going to sit on the shelves forever. What about you? Please let me know if you are also guilty of this first mistake. Buying things because you love them even though you know that they probably won't sell or that they will take a very long time to sell. Mistake number 2 is buying things that were originally intended and manufactured to be collectibles. You know what I'm talking about. The Bradford Exchange collectibles, the Danbury Mint collectibles. There used to be commercials for them on TV, and then you would send in a mail order to get your next collectible plate. I have made this mistake myself, although I don't do it very often. I will buy Precious Moments collectibles if I see them at a good price because people still collect them and other people are actually buying them and flipping them. They are making what is called altered moments. I'll show you a couple photos here. So I've had some luck with collectibles like Precious Moments and Snow Babies and even Willow Tree if I can find those at the right price. But collectible plates, and I'm going to show you one here because I just broke my own rules and bought one. Collectible plates are just a really tough sell. I did get this one because I thought it would look good in my plate wall in my booth, and I thought that it would sell in spite of the fact that it's a collectible. It's got some really pretty flowers on it. It's not like it has a bunch of really personal writing on it. You can't really even tell that it's a collectible. by looking at the face of this. So we'll see what happens with this. I think it's pretty. Lots of people are making plate walls, and that means that they're coming in the booth and buying single plates of different sizes, and they like the flowery patterns is what we are seeing in vintage resale right now. Mistake number 3 is not allowing yourself a wide enough profit margin when you go outsourcing. So if you see something that you really love, you know, and it's $2.09 plus tax, let's say, like a coffee cup, but you know that you can only probably sell it for $9, that's not really leaving yourself enough, because you also have to factor in how much you pay in booth rent, how much commission the store gets on top of every single item that you sell. In our case, it's 10%. Online, this is going to be your listing fee. Also, you need to also factor in how much you spend in gasoline for your car and how much time you spend going out and sourcing items. I have heard that it is wise to be able to mark up your products at least 4 times. If you're only able to mark up something twice, like double it, or mark it up 3 times, I think once you factor in all of your other expenses, that it's going to be very difficult for you to actually sit down at the end of the month or the end of the year and, you know, calculate your bookkeeping very carefully and see that you've actually made a decent profit. Mistake number 4 is going to be for online sellers, and it is ignoring how much it's actually going to cost to ship your item. Buying it because you have seen it on the shelf and it was a good deal and you fell in love with it, but not really calculating when you make that decision on whether or not to buy how much it's going to cost to actually ship the item. So for example, if you had a set of 6 of these, I mean, as I was saying, false craft is heavy stoneware. It's going to be heavy, and you're going to need to be able to justify how much your shipping costs are going to be when you consider if you're going to be able to make a profit on this. So it would probably cost a lot more to ship a set of 6 of these than it would cost to buy them in the first place. And I have heard a lot of people in the comment sections of my videos telling me that shipping costs are just killing their resale business right now. So not considering how much something is going to cost to ship is a huge mistake. I have also heard successful resellers on the YouTube platform explain, because I've watched a lot of videos on the shipping process, in my own desire to learn more about it and research it before I decide whether or not I want to add another layer to my business, which would be an online shop. A lot of people, before they list the item, they will find the box that that item is going to fit in, put that box with the item in it and all the packing peanuts or whatever that they use in there, and weigh it so that they know how much the shipping is going to be. And then therefore they know if they offer free shipping, they're going to have to add the price for shipping into the cost of the item is listed for. So I know that shipping is hurting people. We live in a world where Amazon, if you pay for Prime, they offer free 2-day shipping. We live in a world now where everyone is starting to expect that free shipping and that it's there in 2 days. That's a lot to compete with in a world like this, where Amazon can have everything at your door within 2 days or less. Again, making sure that you are calculating your shipping when you make the decision to buy, I think, is a mistake that a lot of people make, and I could see how easy it would be to make that mistake given how high shipping is nowadays. Mistake number 5 would be not researching before you buy. Here's a good example of this. One of the things that I really like is Fiesta dishes, the vintage ones. However, there are a lot of knockoffs out there, and they're just like new, made in China, sold at the Dollar Tree kind of stuff that looks like Fiesta, but it's not. So that would be an example of not knowing what you're actually getting and buying something that is a knockoff. And you don't necessarily have to put years and years of research and studying into this before you go out and start, taking the plunge and start sourcing for a new reselling business. A lot of research can be done while you're at the store, just having your phone out, using Google Lens to learn about things. Now, Google Lens is not always correct. We have learned that. But for the most part, I have found that Google Lens is usually pretty accurate at identifying makers and patterns. And then another aspect of research would be to look up not just how much people on eBay or Etsy are listing the item for when you decide whether or not you're going to buy it, but I always go into eBay and filter my search results for sold items so that I know how much the item actually sold for, because that number might be a lot lower than the number that you're seeing that people are actually listing them for. So another good example would be knowing the difference between, like, say, vintage Fisher Price and the reproductions of Fisher Price toys. The really old ones are going to be made out of wood, and the newer ones are made out of solely plastic. I'm sure that you guys can give me some other examples in the comments, people who are into things that I just don't source. So anyway, please let me know in the comments if you can think of anything where it's really important to do your research so that you don't accidentally buy a reproduction or a knockoff thinking that it is a vintage item or an antique. All right, mistake number 6 is holding on to dead inventory for too long. If you have an item that has been sitting in your booth for 3 years, I'm guilty of this. I just, for some reason, do not like to go in and remove things from my booth and take them home. And a lot of that is that I don't have another place to put them. Like, I know for a lot of people, if they have dead inventory sitting on their shelves, that they will take it out and put it in their Etsy shop or their eBay shop and see if it sells there. I'm not selling online, so my only option is just to either take it home and put it in a closet somewhere or donate it back to Goodwill. But letting dead inventory sit for too long without either removing it or marking it down is a mistake. Get out your red pen and start taking your price tags and marking down items that have been sitting in there for a year or more, and you will notice that those items will move. For some reason, people like the red pen, and I'm sure this applies online too, where there's just like a little mark crossing it out and then a new sale price is listed on your online items. Mistake number 7 is selling in the wrong place. Now, this can overlap in both online selling and in-person selling. I have some friends in my store who, they are sisters, and they have several antique booths, and they also have an Etsy shop, and they know which types of things are more likely to sell on the Etsy shop than they are in the booth. You're probably not going to be able to sell an entire set of dishes in an antique booth because people are going into the stores and looking to replace just one item that has been lost or broken over the years. Mistake number 8 also applies to booth owners and online sellers, and that is selling something as is without revealing the fact that you're selling it as is and without explaining what's wrong with it. Now, in a booth, you can explain what's wrong with the item, just write as is. I personally will put a little arrow to indicate to people to turn the price tag over, and on the back of the price tag I explain exactly what's wrong with it. I just think that if a person sees that something is as is, that neither the customer nor the person working the cash register should have to guess at what is wrong with the item. They just need to know really quickly what's wrong so that they can make a decision on whether or not they want to buy it anyway. And online, what you're going to do is take very good photos of the damage, the chip or the crack or whatever the case may be, and make sure that the customer knows that you're selling it in as-is condition and exactly what is wrong with it. If you don't do this, it's going to destroy your customer's trust, and that will negatively impact your business. Mistake number 9 is either understocking your antique booth or overstuffing an antique booth. And by understocking, I mean if you have 100 square feet to sell your items in your booth, then you need to make the most of the 100 square feet that you have. So you need to fill your booth without it appearing too cluttered or overstuffed. Obviously, there's a delicate balance there. You want people to be able to look at the booth and feel like they can walk through it without tripping over things that are on the floor, and that they can actually see the items on the shelves. My husband says this about my booth sometimes because I just love to put a bunch of smalls in it. He says that when I look at your booth, there's so much stuff in it, I don't know what to look at. And so a lot of these mistakes today, I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means. I'm guilty of some of these mistakes too. I mean, we all are, right? We're all here to learn from each other. But I've had other people tell me on YouTube that they like my booth. They think it's not cluttered. So I guess I hope I have found that delicate balance. If you sell a lot of furniture, don't just put a dresser in the booth. Put some pretty decor on top of the dresser and use the dresser to sell the smalls and to create vignettes of your smalls on top of it so that it looks nice. And then people might not just buy the dresser, but they might also buy the things that you've placed on top of the dresser because they just look so perfect sitting there. And number 10 is pricing too high or pricing too low. And again, in terms of pricing, I would definitely say do your research online. Let me use this beautiful Lenox Chesapeake pattern gravy boat as an example. If there are 20 sold listings for this on eBay, and it sold for an average of $18, and you are trying to get $36 plus shipping for it, you're pricing too high. And on the other hand, if you are consistently pricing too low, you're going to have a really difficult time when you actually sit down and look at your numbers with being able to say that you made a profit in your vintage reselling business for that month or for that year. So this is something where success with pricing comes with time and experience, but has been made a whole lot easier by the internet, and by being able to look at what other resellers have actually sold an item for. Well, what do you think about my list today? Do you agree? Do you disagree with anything I said today? Or do you have something that you would like to add? Please let me know in the comments. I'm coming up on a huge milestone for my channel. I am quickly approaching 10,000 subscribers, which would be amazing for me in this small channel. Please, if you enjoy this type of content, subscribe to the channel. It is completely free to subscribe to someone's YouTube channel. I think that word subscribe kind of throws some people off because we are so used to thinking that a subscription is something that costs us money every month. Like I pay a Netflix subscription and that costs me money for that. But it is free to subscribe to someone's YouTube channel. Only subscribe, however, if you actually enjoy this type of content and want to see future videos from me. All right, today we have viewer Q&A, and then we also have the plant outtakes and the pet outtakes that I mentioned earlier. So I'll be right back and we're going to do viewer Q&A. Okay, the first comment comes from Brenda Tomlinson, and she left this message for me about the question on whether or not those spring-loaded or those tension-loaded plate holders would damage your plates and my plates that I'm using in my plate wall for my booth. So she says, regarding the spring-loaded plate holders, the biggest risk of damage is to fragile china and antique plates. In your booth, you have them on sturdier plates, which shouldn't be problematic. I would not use them on any plate with a gold, silver, or platinum painted edge. So thank you, Brenda. I think this is what I'm going to go with because there's been a lot of question on whether or not the plates are actually in danger of being damaged by those because of the tension they put. I've had people say that they can cause hairline fractures. The next comment came on a booth sales report video that I did, and it is from Bridget Franklin. She said, "You are not counting in your booth rental, which is considerable. I'm sure because I live in a tourist town in South Carolina, which is just outside Myrtle Beach, and I pay $450 a month booth rent, and that does include one showcase, which is only $65, but that is considerable when you're considering your profit margin. So don't forget that. So there's been some back and forth about this on my channel. So basically what I'm sharing on my booth sales videos, if you're interested in these, I have a whole playlist of them. I share how much I paid for the item and then how much the item sold for. And that item does include the 10% commission that I pay to the store, but it does not include my rent or my costs in my vehicle or anything like that. So for a while, I got another comment like Bridget's, and I decided to stop using profit margin in those videos. But then I had a woman comment who is a CPA, and she said, you are correct in that what you're sharing is gross profit margin. And that gross profit margin is a widely used and reputable financial metric for businesses. And what she said was basically when businesses figure out what their gross profit margin is, it figures out how much they're making on the product. And then the higher that gross profit margin is, the more money you'll be able to have set aside to pay your booth rent. So yes, Bridget, you are correct. When I'm doing gross profit margin, it does not include my booth rental, but I do always mention that at the beginning of all of those videos, that I am not including how much I pay in booth rent. I'm paying $1.98 per square foot, and my booth is a little less than 100 square feet. So I'm paying less than $200 a month for my booth rental. Now, of course, if I factored in booth rental into those videos, that would mean the profit margin would be lower, but I'm not going for that. What I'm going for is sharing gross profit margin and also being clear at the beginning of the video that it does not include my rent. All right, thank you for that, Bridget. The next comment comes from Marie Schmidt, and she left a comment on a video where I shared my income for April, and she said, wow, you have to love what you are doing here because you are not getting rich by any means. And she is right. You're absolutely right, Marie. I am not getting rich by any means. When I figure out my income taxes at the end of every year, it is a rather sobering and a little bit depressing number when I see what my actual profit was. I do love this. I do believe that vintage items should be rescued from Goodwill, rescued from the landfill, and resold to someone who appreciates their value and will give them a home. So with that said, I do love this. I do enjoy it. And the second layer to my business is this YouTube channel. So I'm actually hoping to make enough money on YouTube AdSense to be able to meaningfully supplement my income from the antique booth, because the income from the antique booth is not very much. I'm sure I could do better if I started selling online. It's just not something that I want to do right now, this point in my life. Also, I'm not trying to sell anything on my YouTube channel. I don't really feel like doing any ad sponsorships where you have to watch a commercial in the middle of my video. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to provide you with content for free. I don't want to have certain videos that are for members only and that members have to pay extra for those videos. I want to be able to provide you with value and entertainment for free. And that is what will happen if you decide to subscribe to the channel. But Marie, you're absolutely correct. I don't make a lot of money in the antique store. Not to say that some people don't. I've said this many times, and I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, but the antique dealers who do make money are the ones who have multiple booths, meaning they have a lot of real estate in the store. They also have a wide variety of items at a wide variety of prices. Whereas my booth tends to be very kitchen-y. It's just what I love. And it works for me. And the next viewer question comes from Mark Treharn. And he says, do you get more joy out of buying or selling? And I get joy out of both things, actually. I guess the most joyful things about this for me are finding something vintage in a thrift store that I know is undervalued, the thrill of the hunt, And then the biggest joy of the selling is because I'm only at the store 2 days out of the month working the register. I'm often not there when my things sell, but it's going through my envelopes that is the most enjoyable thing. I decided to go get one of my sales envelopes, but basically, every paycheck we get an envelope, and in it, our tickets have been returned to us. This is the most fun of all of it, in my opinion, is being able to go back and look at what sold and being able to go through this envelope and seeing my price stickers again. So that's the most fun to me, because then I'll go, oh yeah, I remember that, Ran out of battery life in my other camera and had to switch things up a little bit. But next up for you, I have the pet outtakes, and it is a special rescue edition and plant updates. So make sure you stay tuned if you're interested in my plants and my pets. Okay, I had a viewer who told me that the African violet probably would not like being in this window because it gets a lot of afternoon sun, and I think that viewer was right, because these little leaves right here are not looking so hot. So I'm going to put it back where it started off, over here on my buffet. I did these videos about over a year ago at this point, but this is the antique buffet that I bought at Goodwill, and I refinished it and de-stressed it. I refinished it with chalk paint. Anyway, so I'm putting you back where you'll be happy again, out of the direct sunlight. The next exciting update is that we just got some new shrubs this morning. So when we had our male dog Abel, he passed away at 12 years old. He had osteosarcoma in his shoulder, so that's basically bone cancer in his shoulder. He was the type of dog who would lift his leg and pee on the shrubs, so everything we would try, they wouldn't make it. So my sweet little bear, he doesn't do that. He doesn't lift his leg and pee on things. Look at my little guy and my little Ruby. So anyway, we're trying and we're feeling encouraged that these new shrubs will make it. We made sure to get very heat tolerant shrubs, and this was a gift from my neighbor Rosalind. She gave this to us yesterday. It's hydrangea. I thought my husband was going to put this in the backyard because these actually do better with morning sun, but because of this beautiful maple right here in the front yard, the hydrangea should hopefully survive in that spot because it will get some shade from the maple. And the update on the spider plants is that they are in the porch in their macrame plant hangers, and this one is still hanging in there. It wasn't looking too happy when I repotted it, but it's hanging in there, and it's definitely not looking as good as this one. This one looks amazing. I'm obsessed with 1970s macrame. It's one of my things that I just really love. But I think it's gonna be okay. I think it's gonna make it. Just getting used to its new surroundings. And this is a feral cat. I'm calling him Edward Scissorhands, and just Edward for short. I am going to need to trap this little guy and TNR him or her. I'm pretty sure it's a boy. And that he's a very young cat. I am trying to feed him in the same place all the time so that it will be natural for me to place the trap in the same spot where he's been eating. So anyway, this is Edward Scissorhands. Definitely encountered many a neighborhood stray, and it's about 50-50 on whether or not they are truly feral, which means they completely missed out on being socialized properly with humans. And on 50-50 the other way on that they are actually friendly with humans, but have somehow ended up stray. So in those situations, I have been able to foster them and get them adopted through our county shelter system. And the feral ones, you just trap them, neuter them, or spay them, and put them back outside after they have recovered from their surgery. And then I choose to continue to provide food security for the ferals. So this little guy, his ear is not tipped, so I don't think anyone has trapped him. I think it's safe to say that no one has TNR'd him, otherwise his ear would be tipped. Bye, Edward. I'm happy that you're letting me stand here and talk to the camera. I should mention that if you are going to attempt to trap a feral cat, you should watch a YouTube video or two first. I would recommend watching the Kitten Lady. I just completely trust her and her advice. The biggest things are have a plan for what you're going to do before you trap the cat, meaning know where you are going to take them the next morning to get spayed or neutered. They will also receive the rabies vaccine. At least that's how it works here in where I live, and I have to pay for this myself. This is something where I pay a reduced rate at a local rescue here in Atlanta. It's $50 now. It used to be just $25 for a feral cat, and it's $50 now. That includes the surgery and the vaccine. So it's just something I do as a gift to the community so we don't get overrun with feral cats in our neighborhood, and as a gift to the animal. So anyway, yeah, the best time to trap is at dusk because they're out looking for food. Make sure you know what you're going to do with the cat the next morning, because they're going to have to stay in the trap until they have recovered from their surgery, so be prepared for all of that. If you let the cat out into a safe room in your house, if it's feral, you will not be able to get it back into a carrier or anything to get it to the vet. So, and once you trap them once, they become trap wise, and it can be very difficult to trap a feral cat twice. So don't let the kitty out of the trap. You'll need to hold the kitty in the trap until you take them to the place to get their surgery, and then you'll have to hold them in the trap while they recover. For males, it's only 24 hours recovery. For females, it's 48. If the female is pregnant, the recovery is longer. So I think it's like as much as, well, anyway, at this point you're having to like change newspaper or change potty pads, and that's a whole other thing because the cat's gonna have to go potty in the trap, you know. So that's a whole other thing, and there are YouTube videos on that showing how that's done safely, because feral cats can be dangerous. You don't want to mess with getting bitten or anything like that. Even a scratch can be dangerous. So anyway, all of that's coming up is trapping Edward Scissorhands and getting him some help, getting him neutered and vaccinated, and then putting him back out. Oh yeah, and also if you're going to trap, they need to be hungry or else they're not going to go in the trap. So you have to withhold food for 24 hours, which is hard for us because it's our love language. We like to feed them. It's the only way we can show them love when they're feral, is feeding them. But they need to be hungry, and you're going to have to withhold food for 24 hours so that they're hungry enough to go into the trap and eat the food that you have placed in the trap as the lure or the bait.